The Old Testament is from Ecclesiastes chapter 1. Vanity of vanity, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities. All is vanity. I, the preacher, have been king over Israel in Jerusalem, and I applied my heart to seek and to search out by wisdom all that is done under heaven. It is an unhappy business that God has given to the children of man to be busy with. I have seen everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and striving after the wind. I hated all my toil in which I toiled under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to the man who will come after me. And who knows whether he will be wise or a fool? Yet he will be master of all for which I have toiled, and used my wisdom under the sun. This also is vanity. So I turned about and gave my heart up to despair over all the toil of my labors under the sun, because sometimes a person who has toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skill must leave everything to be enjoyed by someone who did not toil for it. This also is vanity and a great evil. What has a man from all the toil and striving of heart with which he toils beneath the sun? For all his days are full of sorrow, and his work is a vexation. Even in the night, his heart does not rest. This also is vanity. There is nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God. For apart from him, who can eat or have enjoyment? For to the one who pleases him, God has given wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner he has given the business of gathering and collecting, only to the one who pleases God. This also is vanity and striving after the wind. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
The epistle is from Colossians chapter 3.
If then you have been raised with Christ, seek the things that are above, where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God.
Set your mind on things that are above,
not on things that are on earth.
For you have died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God.
When Christ, who is your life, appears, then you also will appear with him in glory.
Put to death, therefore, what is earthly in you.
Sexual immorality,
impurity,
Passion,
Evil desire,
and covetousness, which is idolatry.
On account of these, the wrath of God is coming. In these you too once walked when you were living in them, but now you must put them all away.
anger,
wrath,
malice,
slander,
And obscene talk from your mouth. Do not lie to one another, seeing that you have put off the old self with its practices,
and have put on the new self, which is being renewed in knowledge after the image of its Creator.
Here there is not Greek and Jew,
circumcised and uncircumcised,
barbarian,
Scythian,
slave,
Free,
but Christ is all and in all. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
I invite you to stand for the Alleluia.
These things are
Someone in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." But he said to him, "Man, who made me a judge or arbitrator over you?" And he said to them, "Take care and be on your guard against all covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions." And he told them a parable, saying, "The land of a rich man produced plentifully, and he thought to himself, 'What shall I do, for I have nowhere to store my crops?' And he said, 'I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry.' But God said to him, 'Fool, this night your soul is required of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God.'" This is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
Please be seated. At this time, we invite the children forward for our children's message. As we continue our sermon series, you may be seated. Boy, shift the liturgy this week, and it's amazing how creatures of habit we are, at least for me, that I'm in that rhythm up here and going, oh, no, things are a little different. So, good to see you this morning. I'm Dave Hall. I'm the pastor here at Mount Hope. And we continue our sermon series on questions for God as we take a look at that reading from Ecclesiastes today. And those words from Solomon, wondering, what should I do? What should I do is a common question for us, and I think it's there no matter what stage of life that we find ourselves in. When we're young children, we're learning from others and wondering, well, what should I do? How do I do this? And what does it take to get to that next step? In the teen years, in middle school and high school, we wonder, what should I do? And we're faced with many, many choices. And sometimes we choose wisely, and sometimes we don't. And then we're approaching adulthood, and we're wondering, what should I do for my career? What should I do for that next step? And what is it going to take for me to get from here to there? And then we maybe have that question of, should I get married? And if yes, who? And then the question of, should we bring children into this world? And if yes, how many? And then we're grinding away in that workaday world with the work-filled day and the sleepless nights and the anxiety and the stress, and constantly wondering, what should I do? What are the next steps for me to do? And then we finally end up in that magical land of retirement. And that question of what should I do doesn't seem to go away, does it? Because as you retire, then you say, well, what am I going to do? What should I do in this next chapter? What should I do with my days and my time? Because there's only so much daytime TV anybody can watch. And there's only so many games of golf anybody can take in. And so what should I do? It's a question that goes with us all our days. And as we hear from Solomon in today's reading, we realize that he wrestled with this question as well. As he wrestled with the question of meaning and what is actually meaningful that he should do. It's believed by many that King Solomon wrote this book of Ecclesiastes late in his life. King Solomon was a son of David, second son by Bathsheba. Solomon was the one who had the sense when God said, I will give you whatever you want, that Solomon said, I would like wisdom. And so God made him the wisest king. And yet, as you look at his life unfold, he may have had wisdom, but he didn't always use that wisdom. Because over the course of his lifetime, he accumulated 700 wives and 300 concubines, essentially girlfriends. So this is one man who had 1,000 women living under his roof. Amazing. And yet each of these wives, as they came in with their own religion and their own gods. And he indulged them, and that led him away from God. But yet he still had that godly wisdom, and sometimes it pours out. And so I want to share some verses that we didn't hear earlier that were left out of our reading from Ecclesiastes 2, verses 1 through 11, where Solomon says, I thought in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure, to find out what is good, but that also proved to be meaningless. Laughter, I said, is foolish, and what does pleasure accomplish? I tried cheering myself with wine and embracing folly, my mind still guiding me with wisdom. I wanted to see what was worthwhile for men to do under heaven during the few days of their lives. I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself and planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made reservoirs to water groves of flourishing trees. I bought male and female slaves and had other slaves who were born in my house. I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. I amassed silver and gold for myself, and the treasure of kings and provinces. I acquired men and women singers, and a harem as well, the delights of the heart of man. I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me. In all this, my wisdom stayed with me. I denied myself nothing desired by my eyes. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my work, and this was the reward for all my labor. Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done, and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless. A chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. Solomon was conceivably a man who had everything. And if he didn't have it, he could buy it. And yet, as he's approaching the end of his life, he says, all is vanity, all is meaningless. All is like just a puff of air. And so what's the point? What's the point as we go through life if everything is so meaningless? Why do we fill Folsom Field on Saturdays during football season if it really doesn't matter if CU wins or loses? Why do I sit in front of my television screaming at it on Sunday afternoons during Bronco games if it really doesn't matter if they win or lose? What does it matter what jobs we have, what clothing we wear, whether or not we comb or wash our hair? What's the point? What is the point of our existence here if everything that we have is here today and gone tomorrow? If everything is vanity, meaningless, chasing after the wind. Solomon shared some other words. In Ecclesiastes 2, 24 and 25, he says, there is nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God, for apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? It's ironic that this also shows up the week that we hear those words from Jesus in Luke 12. As Jesus is approached by two brothers who are having a squabble over their inheritance, and they want him to settle the matter. And he tells a story. He tells a story about a man who reached a point where he said, oh boy, I'm just going to build bigger barns, I'm going to sit back, eat, drink, and be merry, and live the good life. And then God says to that man, fool, this night your soul is required of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. Solomon rightly lays out that if we can enjoy our toil and enjoy the blessings that we have, they are a gift from God. And yet, if we are not rich toward God, then something is definitely missing. So what does it mean to be rich toward God? As Solomon closes out this book of wisdom in Ecclesiastes, he shares some very poignant thoughts in that last chapter. At the beginning of chapter 12, he says, "Remember also your Creator in the days of your youth, before the evil days come and the years draw near, of which you will say, I have no pleasure in them." Remember your Creator. Remember the one who made you. Remember the one who knit you together in your mother's womb and gave you the gift of life. And who not only has given you the gift of life, but who gives you the gift of everything that you enjoy in this life. Who gives you the gifts of family, of friends, of home, of health, of food, of clothing, of hobbies, of all the blessings that we have as we look around. Solomon also wrote these words, Ecclesiastes 12, 13, and 14. He says, "The end of the matter, all has been heard. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment with every secret thing, whether good or evil." Remember your Creator and stay connected to his word with the commands that he gives us as we get to live our lives as his people. Those commands that flow out of the gifts and the incredible love of our Creator, and that shape and form us as his people. And so as we look around at all of the blessings we have, all of the things that are good gifts from our God, we also remember that it's not the gift that's the God, but God who gave the gift. Because the gift in and of itself can become its own God. It can become that endless pursuit of bigger, better, faster, more, right? Pursuing the American dream. And yet we can gain the whole world and lose our own soul. When the gift becomes the God instead of the God who gives us that gift. And it's our God who also shares these words in Hebrews 13. He says, "Keep your life free from love of money and be content with what you have. For he has said, I will never leave you nor forsake you." Money is not a bad thing, but the obsession with it is. The blessings, the stuff that we have are not bad things, but the endless pursuit and the overindulgence and overfocus on them is. Because the true gift that we have is the gift that God promised us in our baptism. That gift that he will always be with us till the end of the age. That he will never leave us nor forsake us. As Paul writes to Timothy, he shares these words. "But godliness with contentment is great gain. For we brought nothing into the world, and we cannot take anything out of the world. But if we have food and clothing, with these we will be content." We leave the world in the same way that we brought it. As Solomon reminds us, no matter what we amass in this world, we will leave it behind for someone else. And that person might be foolish with those things. And so we cling to those things that are eternal. We cling to those things that are unchanging. And we draw our contentment and our sense of self and our sense of worth and our sense of purpose from that one who has blessed us with all of these things. And so even if it comes down to just having food and clothing, we can be content. Paul, who wrote these words for us, says, "I know what it's like to be content." And if you think about Paul's life with his constant travels, with his constant danger, with being in jail, with being shipwrecked and everything else, you wonder, what does he know? And And it's not what he knows, but it is who he knows. He knows the one who is guiding him throughout that journey. He knows the one who is keeping him safe and who is working in and through him to make an impact not only for now, but for eternity in the lives of other people. So, what should we do? If it's not the pursuit of bigger, better, faster, more stuff, whoever dies with the most toys wins, should we just relax? Just take it easy. Don't work too hard. Should we just, make enough to get by? Or maybe not even that much and hope that God surrounds us with other people to just take care of us? We have this tension in our culture today, don't we? We have this tension between, being wealthy is bad. Being successful is bad. Unless you're the one who's wealthy and successful, and then you say it's good. So is it bad to achieve? Is it bad to be successful? Is it bad to take advantage of the opportunities that God lays out for you? And I would say no. And I think Paul would say no as well. As he shares with us in 1 Corinthians 10, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God. Whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God. Everything that we do in this life does have meaning. It has meaning for the people that are impacted now, and it also has meaning for the impact that we have in the lives of others for eternity. As Paul also reminds us in Colossians, if then you have been raised with Christ, seek the things that are above where Christ is seated, at the right hand of God. Set your mind on things that are above, not on things that are on earth, where you have died and your life is hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, appears, then you also will appear with him in glory. So what should I do? What should you do? What should we do with the things that we have and the opportunities that present themselves? What should we do as we get up each morning and live each day and then go to bed each night? We give thanks and stay connected to our Creator, to the God who has created us, saved us, and by the waters of baptism has claimed and cleansed us to make us holy. We continue to get to know our God as we dig into his word, as we feast at his table, to receive his forgiveness and his grace. And we have his word and this meal and his spirit continue to shape us as we live our lives as his representatives, as his ambassadors in this world, as we walk to the one that is to come. Amen. Next week, we're going to shift gears and shift into a series called By Faith, where we will look at what God reveals to us in Hebrews 11 through 13, those great chapters with those great heroes of faith. So if you know somebody who has questions about faith or is just a little interested in what this thing is that brings us together, that impacts and shapes our lives, I encourage you to bring them for this 4-week series